That I am.
The chair recognizes the author for a 4-minute opening statement.
Timothy Nwachukwu, representing the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you, Sir Presiding Officer. You Vote 2012 will be the theme of this year's election. But when you vote, do you fully know where your vote is going? As of Saturday, we are within 127 days where many of us in this room will be voting for the very first time. The feeling of potentially making a difference in the American political system is nothing short of incredible. The Electoral College, though, the votes that we cast are put into our state's respective pools, if you will, and whichever candidate has the highest percentage of those popular votes will receive every single electoral vote. So for the last 200 plus years, we have been using what I would consider as an outdated system that does not fully represent the voices of the American people. So is it possible to say, without equivocation, that this system is fair? It is my belief that every voice should be heard, which means that reform is in fact necessary. My proposal looks to eradicate the current winner-take-all system, replacing it with a hybridized, if you will, popular college that proportionally distributes electoral votes and that will proportionally distribute electoral votes in a state-based minimum 35% of the state's popular vote. This, my friends, will ensure that everyone, every single registered American, or from the 2008 election, all 101 million Americans that are registered to vote will have an opportunity to have their voice heard. And I yield the remainder of my time to my summation speech.
Thank you, Delegate. You have yielded a minute and 50 seconds.
Thank you.
With that, we move on to non-debatable and technical questions. Are there such questions on the floor? The chair recognizes Kitchens, Worth, Miller, Ferris, Zeller, Smith, Barberis, Connecticut, Ingram.
Wisconsin, have faithless electors ever changed the final results of an election?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
Ingram family of Alabama. Can a state currently split electoral college votes to two different candidates?
Yes, in Maine and Nebraska.
He's gone now already.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Colin Smith, and I think my question might have been answered. Didn't catch it. Can you give me an example of a presidential election where the candidate was selected primarily off he lost the majority vote and won in the Electoral College?
Year 2000, George Herbert Walker Bush versus Al Gore.
Thank you, Author.
Ferris, is the Electoral College dictated in the Constitution?
It is dictated on its existence and the
Thank
number
you,
of...
Author.
Brittany Zeller, Pennsylvania delegation. I was just wondering how many faithless electors have there been in the last couple of years?
In the last couple of years, there's actually been, since the turn of the 20th century, there have been 8, most recently in the year 2004.
Thank you.
It's Canonical from South Carolina. I do thank the chair. Delegate, is this proposal trying to amend the Constitution?
Yes, sir.
Are there further questions on the floor? The chair recognizes Jones, the delegate from the Model United Nations, Myers, Cobb, Jordan, Lidle.
What would have happened if states they had 9 electoral votes and the vote was passed, like it was split 50%? How would the electoral votes be
In the case that there is an odd number, and for some god-awful reason it is a 50-50 split, then it would be left in the hands of the state legislature.
Ryan Puglisi, Model United Nations. Thank you, Sir Chair. Are there any offenses, federal or state-wise, if an elector is found to be a faithless elector during an election?
You can be put in federal prison.
Thank you.
Under the current system, what is the minimum number of states that a candidate could win to win the presidency?
on the electoral vote or on the popular vote? On the electoral college, you really only need to win by 20 states. In the 2008 presidential election, there was a little more than 161 million registered voters who went.
Thank you, Delegate.
Well, in the case that there is no majority winner, then there would have to be a revote casted in that state.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there further questions on the floor to recognize Baker, Owens, Adams?
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Drew Baker, and I am from Florida. Author, could you please give me an example of a third-party candidate ever winning more than 35% of the popular vote in his or her state?
That would be going as far back as the Whig Party.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is KY from the California delegation. The states that are considered solid really south have lower voter turnout than states that are swing states.
No.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Owens, North Carolina. You said there has been 8 faithless electors since the turn of the century, but how many electors has there been since the turn of the century?
How many electors?
Yes.
Well, that means you'd be taking 538 electors and multiplying it by the last.
Thank you, Author.
Thank you.
Before we move to retained speeches, the Chair would like to remind the Chamber to keep both questions and answers brief. Full sentences are unnecessary. With that, we move to intent speeches. The Chair would like to recognize the intent speech, Mark Savija, DC. Oh, wrong proposal. Lorenzo Canenico of SC.
Delegate Barbados Canonico from South Carolina, very good chair. My fellow delegates, I came to the United States not just because of French fries, but because of the freedom that the United States allows us to have. And the way we exercise that freedom is through the democratic process. And that's why I stand today to protect it. Because as Alexander Hamilton, one of our founding fathers, pointed out, we are a country of laws, not a country of men. He clearly understood that we have to be dictated by the Constitution that establishes systems of checks and balances that our founding fathers fought so dearly for, as opposed to giving to mob rule. My fellow delegates, it's because this proposal today gives too much power to political actions committee, also known as super PACs. Today I urge you not to pass it. First of all, super PACs have too much power. According to Mike Allen, a Political article May 30 of 2012, super PACs for the GOP alone has spent $1 billion. Thus, this Political Actions Committee not only have the resources, but also the power to influence elections. In addition, the Supreme Court case, Citizens United versus FEC, is giving companies the power to unlimitedly donate to super PACs. And these super PACs are able to implement negative campaigning by using networks such as Robert Murdoch's media networks. What this does is that not only gives the wrong impression of the candidate, but it undermines democracy as a whole. For these reasons, my fellow delegates, I urge you to negate. But furthermore, let's explore how super PACs are able to harm the political process. MIT professor of political science Ansel B. Heavey, on a 2008 study published in the American Political Science Review, pointed out that, as we all know, more people watch TV than they follow the newspapers. Their ratio is actually 4-1. And when these negative advertisements are implemented on TV, the voter turnout lowers of 5% in each state. This empirical study clearly shows that the negative advertising implemented by the Political Actions Committee clearly harms democracy. But furthermore, he points out that it also lowers the feeling of political effectiveness and ethics behind our government. Thus, my fellow delegates, our constituents, once they hear these attack ads, they're going to be promulgated by super PACs. They're not going to be feeling confident by the political system. They're not going to be able to exercise the freedom necessary to check an abusive government and to truly participate actively in democracy. If we pass these proposals, my fellow senators, and rely so much on the people instead of the law and the Constitution, we're creating an exact environment for super PACs to foster and use their unnecessary and unlimited power to sway elections a lot more than they do now. And although I do applaud the author's intent to promote fairness within the democratic process, this proposal is not the way to go, because it does nothing about super PACs, and until we're able to solve that problem, either with another proposal or with an amendment, we cannot take the risk of harming democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The Chair will now recognize the pro-intent speaker. Please approach the well. Delegates?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most Public Michigan delegation, I reserve the right to yield the remaining time to the author's summation.
So reserved.
Who among us doesn't grimace a little bit when we think of the 8 years that George Bush spent in office instead of Al Gore? Yeah, I thought so. Let's think about the electoral system for a second. It was created in 1787 in the Constitution. But the Founding Fathers did not trust the common people, because let's face it, the common people were essentially farmers that had no access to information and knowledge that was minimal to vote in the political process. This is simply not true anymore. We have the internet, we have newspapers, we have television. The common people, in general, have way more knowledge about the political system than we did in 1787. Therefore, the electoral college system is simply not relevant anymore. As for the constitutionality of this particular proposal, this proposal does not remove the electoral college, it reforms it. The electoral college has been reformed multiple times since 1787, and if you genuinely think the electoral college is the same as when the Constitution is written, that's just not true. Some states, in fact, use similar systems to what the proposal has indicated. Today, Maine and Nebraska are two of those states. And some states, such as Maryland, have used different systems entirely separate from the constitutional definition of the Electoral College for years after the Constitution came out. And they did not need a constitutional amendment. Therefore, I don't think that there is any constitutional argument against this proposal. Now let's get to the real issue, which is our rights as American citizens to decide who is our leader. It is insulting to me, and I'm sure to all of you, as independent free thinkers in the most free country in the world, and it is insulting to Americans everywhere. It insults the very idea of democracy. This proposal is a unique action against the electoral system. States that wouldn't get attention under popular votes, such as Wyoming, would still get attention under this system. Minority votes will remain not disenfranchised. It's clearly the best of both worlds.
With that, the floor is open for con-pro debate. The chair seeks the first con speaker. The chair will recognize the delegate in Pennsylvania, Agnew. Just a second, delegate. Go ahead.
Erin Agnew, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A previous speaker brought Alexander Hamilton to the podium with him. I would like to introduce his personal friend and a man... Oh, I'm sorry. And a man who has a very intimate relationship with the Constitution. In the Federalist Paper number 42, James Madison very clearly stated that he believed in the responsibility and the intrinsic morality of the citizens of the United States. Furthermore, a quote that I think is very pertinent to this proposal. Leave us to the democracy of Greece, and you will deliver us unto the fate of Rome. The Electoral College existed for a reason at the time of its enactment, and it exists for a reason today. Now, I do not agree with some of the prohibitory things that it enacts, but I do not think that this proposal reforms them correctly. First of all, there is a constitutional argument against it. In Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution, not only is the Electoral College established overall, but it clearly states that individual states have the right to determine how they will institute the Electoral College, and furthermore, that they need not conform to any kind of national standard. This also infringes on states' rights, or on the Constitution, because it amends a constitutional statute without an amendment to the Constitution. Lines 22 to 24 sound very similar to the current Electoral College, and the 35% necessary that is listed on line 26 seems prohibitory only to third-party candidates and to prevent pluralities. These things, while not entirely desirable in our election system, are certainly not the worst problems. Furthermore, in lines 36 and 38, this really unjustly punishes states who do not deal with it in a timely fashion. While I'm sure this proposal
Thank you,
is fair.
Delegate. The floor is now open for the first pro speech. The chair will recognize the delegate from Alabama.
Yes, the family of Alabama, and I reserve the right to yield the rest of my time to Shanklin from Georgia.
So reserved.
Thank you. The conventional wisdom among statisticians regarding the Electoral College is that the enormous bias of the winner-take-all system gives greater voting power to citizens of large states. Using a 50% weighted majority game, Mann and Stanley empirically calculated each state's chance of casting the deciding electoral vote and determined that larger states have more power because they enjoy a greater likelihood of casting the pivotal ballot to any given election. In 1968, John Advanced III observed that as the population of a state increases, the chance a voter has to affect the outcome of the election decreases as a ratio less than the increasing population. For example, a voter in New York had 3.312 times the voting power of someone in the District of Columbia. The importance of the one person, one vote equality value has been most prominently articulated by the Supreme Court case in Gray versus Sanders, in which it held that the state primary voting system modeled after the Electoral College was a violation of the Constitution's equal protection guarantee. And with that, I yield the rest of my time to Shanklin from Georgia.
You've yielded 49 seconds.
Shanklin, Georgia. Critics argue that the college is archaic because it's inherent, undemocratic, and gives certain swing states disproportionate influence in electing the president and vice president. This proposal allows the voice of the people to come through clearly and shows that we are a true democratic country. It doesn't make sense when certain presidents are elected by electoral votes, but not the majority. This is a turning point for America, and we have a right to be represented as one of the greatest democracies in the world. The rights of democracy have been instilled within us since birth, and this proposal upholds these rights. And with that, I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, delegates. The chair now seeks a con speaker. The chair recognizes a delegate Miller.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Jasmine Miller, Louisiana. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Driscoll.
That's your right.
Thank you, Sir Chair. While I do applaud the author's intent, I do not think that a federal mandate is necessary. Currently, there is an interstate tax being voted on by many states to enact this exact same thing within the states. I don't understand why we need to make a federal mandate if it's already being voted on. Nebraska and Maine have already voted to do this. Also, even if I did support this federal mandate, I don't understand the 35%. Currently, California has 55 electoral college votes. Say one candidate gets 33%. That would mean 18 proportional votes, but instead they're going to get none with this 35%. Faithless electors have not managed to change the outcome of elections. Also, the author stated that there have been 8 faithless electors since the turn of the century, which is less than 1% of electors. With that, I yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Driscoll.
You've yielded a minute.
May Driscoll from Oklahoma. First, I would like to start off by saying this doesn't completely change the problem of the winner not being decided by popular vote. In at least one election, which I believe was the Garfield election, he had the popular vote, but he did not. Under this system, he would have lost. Because smaller states currently don't have, like a smaller state that says that only has 3 electoral votes might still have a lower population population rate when compared to a larger state, and they actually decide more than one representative. This can cause a delegate to basically lose an election and still have a popular vote. It doesn't fix it. It just band-aids a problem and can still cause other delegates to lose there. Next up, it still has its own loophole since what if a delegate has around 50% of the vote? It would be difficult to decide how many votes he gives, or even rounding up and down can cause problems. Next up, with the minor parties, it kind of harms them as well, since most minor parties almost never get 35%. The last time a minor party got 35% was in the 1800s with the Whig Party. To see that we have
delegate. With that, the chair would like to recognize a pro speaker. The chair recognizes the delegate from California. Jerry.
Thank you, Sir Chair, and I reserve the right to read my time to the delegate from South Carolina.
That's your right.
Thank you. One of the most fundamental rights...
delegation.
Thank you, sir. Spencer Perry from the delegation of California. One of our most fundamental rights is our right to vote, but if you're the minority in your state, your vote goes to the other party. That means the Electoral College has the complete possibility to turn an election the other way, despite who people really voted for. And that's happened 4 times in American history. 4 times. This proposal eliminates the Electoral College and instead implements a popular Electoral College. Something that's far more democratic, far less of a republic, and far more equal to our citizens. The only reason that we've allowed the Electoral College to continue is because of tradition. It was created in a time where news couldn't travel fast enough to our citizens, so we sent representatives to Washington to make informed decisions. But that is no longer the case. Nowadays, we can receive news a mile a minute. We do not need people to cast our ballots for us. The Electoral College makes us less like a democracy, more like a republic, and the result is just like throwing your vote in the trash. If we want to have a true impact on who we elect to office, the first step is implementing this author's proposal. So, if we finally eliminate the Electoral College, not only do we eliminate an enormous out-of-date loophole, but your vote will be counted as yours, our country will become more democratic, and we will finally bring our votes back to the voters. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to the other delegates.
You have yielded 28 seconds.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Greg Brown from the great state of South Carolina. I would like to say that we will allow third parties to have actual representation in our country, allowing third party candidates to have an actual say in today's politics. And if we don't do that, we'll continue to allow the Electoral College to vote for the 2 parties, making an unjust situation and making minorities less representative.
Thank you, delegate. The chair seeks the final speaker. The chair recognizes the delegate from the Model United Nations.
Arlena Kai, Model United Nations. Thank you, Sir Chair. A previous delegate said that in 4 past elections, the minority president, and by minority I mean the president that was elected, received a minority of the popular vote, was elected to the presidency 4 times. I think it's important to realize that the first 3 of those times, there was a plurality vote, so it did split the popular vote, and that is probably why the popularly voted president didn't ascend to the presidency, and I'm very sorry for that, but that happened a really long time ago, so we should probably just get over that, because, I mean, the Electoral College has been here for so long, and I think it's really a part of our American identity, and the last time, which this is, sorry, and the last time that this has happened in the 2000 election with Bush and Al Gore, the state that really decided the election was Florida. And in that state, there were really confusing ballots and poorly maintained machinery in a few of the counties, which really made it uncertain about which candidate really won the popular vote. But in 2002,
Congress passed the Help America Vote Act. And this was passed with broad bipartisan support. So both parties really did want to keep the Electoral College and make sure that it would be able to continue into the future. And with this act, the national standard for the voting system, as well as certain election procedures, were raised to a certain standard and were made standardized throughout the nation. And grants were given to state and local governments in order to assist them achieve this goal. So, I mean, we are trying to keep the Electoral College, and we are trying to reform it to keep it. We don't need to throw out the system which has served us for the past forever since this nation has been founded. So I don't see a good reason to throw it away. We are a Republican, thank you.
Your time has elapsed. Time for comment or debate has also elapsed. The chair recognizes the proposal author for 3 minutes, 50 seconds each.
Nwachukwu, representing the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you, Sir Chair. I would like to delve a little bit into some of the speeches. One of the delegate who mentioned the minority vote. I would just like to go ahead and mention that in the 2008 election, Barack Hussein Obama had 69,456,879 votes compared to John McCain's 59,934,814 votes. That's on the popular vote. I am a registered independent, and the closest candidate to either one of those two had a little over 700,000 votes. That is not the fault of this system. The 35%, that's not causing fault. That's actually encouraging more people to go out and vote and to become more educated so that they can have a greater difference in this country. I would also like to allude to some of the perennial red states. Texas, in the 2008 election, 44% of the votes went to Barack Obama, which was 15 electoral votes. My own home state of Kentucky, 41%, 3 electoral votes. Georgia, 47%, 7 electoral votes. All of those would have gone to Barack Obama. There were only a total of 6 states between both major candidates that either candidate had less than 35%. Barack Obama, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming for a total of 15 electoral votes, and John McCain with the District of Columbia, Hawaii, and Vermont for a total of 10. So as you can see, what we're trying to do here, we're trying to incorporate more of you. We were founded for the people. How is it possible to say that we should go more on the law and not follow our gut feeling? We don't follow our own beliefs as Americans. I ask you this, when you go and vote, are you voting for that candidate, or are you voting for a state-appointed elector to vote for you? In the cases of all of the faithless electors, imagine that you were in that situation where you went and you were looking forward to voting and you casted your ballot, but your ballot didn't count anymore because someone else did your job for you, but they went and they swayed in the other direction. Another delegate alluded to super PACs. Super PACs have absolutely they make no influence whatsoever to strengthen the sway of these voters. And if in fact they do, then it is the fault of the voters for not educating themselves more prior to. So, in conclusion, I'm going to take my seat, and I just want you all to think that when you stand up and vote, yea or nay for this proposal to move on to plenary, I want you all to think, can this actually be done on election day? I personally don't think that's possible. I give the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay. Just a note, this is the final chamber for all proposals on the docket that we voted on, and the chamber will decide whether they pass. With that said, it is a motion. We are hearing the motion that proposal number 146 does now pass. All those in favor, please rise and say aye.